You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder and CEO of We Deepen, Feminine Weapon, and also a certified professional love coach, life coach. I have been really enjoying leading the Love Club recently. There are 22 members who are relationshiping in community. And we have just completed our third month together. And when I say relationship in community, what does that mean? They are all people who are currently single. They're growth minded. They're desiring to have an epic love life. And dating can feel like labor intensive. It can feel lonely in the process. Like you have this longing and we desire to be in a relationship, and to do it in a community, to do it with also the Love Club is mainly for people who are heterosexual. So it's not a women's group. It's not a men's group. It's both genders coming together, and they're all epic people. And again, they want epic love lives. So we're supporting each other, and it includes of relationship education. I'm curating some of the greatest teachers. Last night, our masterclass, we had Don Cartwright, who is a neo-tantra teacher based in Los Angeles. Ken Page of the Deeper Dating podcast is with us on Friday. So if you are currently single, we are opening up registration for the Love Club. If you go to wedeepen.com, click on the Love Club, and you can find out more details and you can apply to join us. Also, what you will see at wedeepen.com, we are reinventing the calendar. There are experiences happening in Los Angeles, Miami, Austin, Texas, New York City, also multi-day events and online experiences and courses. I am curating them. I say me and my team are handpicking these experiences that are, I was using that term conscious events. I like that term conscious events, although sometimes conscious community has a little bit of stigma around it. What I mean by that is that these experiences typically don't include alcohol. And typically when you step into these spaces, like listening to this podcast, you can have epiphanies, perspective shifts, and increase your understanding of self and how you are relating to others. I'll say like relational awareness increases. So check out those events at wedeepen.com. We are going to keep curating them for you. If you do like this podcast, please do rate, subscribe, give it 5 stars. Leave a comment. It helps more people find it, helps also bring more people into the ecosystem for you to meet and enjoy in the dating process, enjoy relating to, invite them to events. Let's have all these experiences together. A couple of weeks ago, I attended a 3-day medicine retreat mastermind ceremony in Calabasas, California. There was a group of about 25 people who are all entrepreneurs, up to things in the world, and everybody shared what with resources that they have to give and what they're aiming to, how they're aiming to up-level their career and create greater impact in the world. And at that event, I met my guest today, Shaman Aurora Destiny Raven. And I, was immediately like, who is this? Who is this woman? Like, she has a bright light, and you can just see a little twinkle in her eyes that she has a vastness of life experience. And I invited her to record a podcast, and just a couple of days ago, we got on the phone and dove deep into conversation to prepare for what we were going to talk about today. And I was, again, delighted by her voice and her unique perspectives and the experiences that she's had on the world. So Destiny, I'm going to call you Destiny here on this podcast. Welcome to the show. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I know today, when we discussed what we're going to talk about, this topic of men and women being friends came about. We also mentioned, twin flames, which I love to go into twin flames and soulmates. Who doesn't love talking about that? But this concept of men and women being friends, and I think it's really relevant to discuss. We're in 2024. Me Too happened in 2018. I think there's a lot of around dating apps. We also have many teachers of healthy relationships that we can see on social media. People like Esther Perel, who we've learned that, one person can't be your one all in everything. And
exhausting.
Yeah, exhausting. And we need communities. And so if you have communities coming together, it's great to have your women's group and it's wonderful to have your men's groups, but where is the interaction happening and how do we best develop bonds with those of the opposite gender without confusion?
Right.
And so that's what I love to start, to start on our discussion today. And through our discussion, I think you have such a fascinating background of how you got into shamanism. So I think that would be important to tap into as well. First, let's start with your background. How did you become, I don't even necessarily want to use the word enlightened, but let's just, for shits and giggles, start there.
We're on that journey, right? You're here on the planet, you're on the enlightened journey. So I was born in Jamaica, and I came to I came to America when I was 4. Before I got here, I had my first near-death experience, where I, drank some bleach and crossed over, came out of my body fully, near death. And once that happened, I was more in tune with the natural world around me, meaning I could see, and hear things and just, what we call spiritually gifted, right? But that didn't really take effect until I got older. And those gifts and those abilities got a little bit, too much for me to handle. And I was about 16 and had left home. And I was still having a lot of these, they were starting to rev up, probably, based on what was going on, of me just going out into the world at 16. And I told one of my friends that, I was having all these, I was hearing a lot of things and, because I had a big, strong clairvoyance for a long time. And so I would hear things, clairaudience and see things and hear things. And I wanted to know deeper, like what was really going on. I had a very Christian religion background. So a lot of this stuff was taboo and, you weren't supposed to be doing it. And so I went and saw this woman who was a voodoo priestess. And I thought I was just going to see her to sort of, help me figure out what to do, how to stop all this stuff from happening, lights flickering at the corner of my eye and all that stuff. And, we had a really long session. She journeyed me. We talked about some things. She saw the near-death experience and explained to me that I came from a long line of shamans and it was my turn to, basically pick up the mantle. You tell a 16-year-old from East New York, Brooklyn that, and it's like, okay, lady, I don't have time for this right now. So it took a long time. It took years for me to be okay with these abilities to be in a real world and have these very woo-woo experiences going on. And I'm an Aquarius sun, Virgo rising, so I'm very logical, very analytical, and I like to dissect things, right? So even though there's this spiritual, context to it, I want to know the science behind it. Like, why is this happening? Why am I going through this? And so it took me on a long journey through a lot of different belief systems, a lot of different, cultures, and learning different ways, uncovering a lot of my own background as a Taino, which is the Native American, but more West Indian Native Americans, and also my Maroon lineage, which the Maroons were the slaves that went to Jamaica and sort of made their own way. And so all of that history came in, and all of that, all of those codes, like I like to say, came in, and I just started to expand on it more and more and more. And after 30 years of doing it, I started, prior to that, of course, I started teaching a lot of the things that I'd learned, a lot of the different energy mechanisms that I work with, sound healing, all of the things. And it's taken me to some wild places, but all enjoyable for sure.
When you say that as a child, you would hear things, mm-hmm. What does that mean? Like, what were you hearing?
So I would hear like conversations, but they wouldn't be conversations in the 3D. They would be of like, sometimes I would see full on scenes of like the 1800s, or I would see, and I would have full on visions of like different time periods. And I would hear, it's obviously the clairaudience, but at that time you don't know. You just think that you're like hearing things. And I'm in Jamaica. There's no TV. I didn't know about television until I got here, right, in the 80s. And so I was hearing all this stuff. And in Jamaica, it's different because within the culture, you have duppy, which is ghosts. We call them duppies and things like that. So there was this information out there in regards to what was happening to me, but it was, again, very taboo. It wasn't something that we gravitated towards because it was deemed as like demonic or whatever. It was dark. It wasn't something people didn't have enough knowledge about it back then because it had been outcast. Now, of course, generations before that, it was a part of the culture, but then, after everything happened, it sort of got pushed in the back and people weren't susceptible to having that be normal. You know what I mean? Like, it is normal. It's not normal in the sense of like everybody needs to be walking around hearing voices, but if you do hear them, it's just spirit. It's just your ability to tune into that frequency and that vibration that it's coming from.
What do you think? What's the point of having access to that frequency? Why were you being shown? And maybe this is, brains, we want to understand everything. Why were you being shown this, and what's the purpose of it, of the knowing of it?
Well, I think it's definitely a choice of the soul. So now we're talking about the soul. We're not talking about the human experience because that's who we are. We are souls having human experiences. And so now we're talking about the soul and what the soul has chosen for the purpose of, first and foremost, expansion. Because if you can't remember these ways, then you can't really expand. This is the true enlightenment, right? Getting to unlock who we truly are. That junk DNA, that 9%. The 9 strands of the junk DNA that they talk about. This is really our superpower, right? Our supernatural abilities, the extrasensory abilities. And we have them so that we can connect and communicate, not just with ourselves, but with nature, with the planet, with other life forms, with other forms of consciousness, with source, with God. This is why we have those connections. So when some people come in and they have that, they're tapped in, it's sort of to help others remember as well as them. Because me coming in like this back then, it's not like I was the only one, but it wasn't talked about the way it is now. Now everybody's a shaman and everybody's hearing voices. And that's all great. That's wonderful. That just means the collective is waking up. The consciousness is expanding. But back then it needed to happen, in smaller increments, because the human psyche could not deal with everybody just waking up at the same time or downloading the celestial realms and talking to angels and all the things that I experienced, right? I don't think we would be too stable if everybody was doing that all at once. So I think one of the reasons why I got chosen, or I chose as a soul to do that, was to not only help myself remember that we can connect to the source through all these different avenues, but to also, remind others.
I love through the human connecting or the soul connecting. Mm-hmm. It's somebody could be listening to this podcast and have soul envy. Like, mm-hmm. Why does she get to hear all the voices? I can't hear the voices. But it's like we each have different gifts and different keys to tune in with one another to reach higher states of collective consciousness. Yeah. So my soul has been deeply interested in mainly male and female relationships. I love relationships in general, but I want to focus in on the relationship between the man and woman, because that's how procreation happens. Mm. That's where children come from. And I would love to see a world where children were raised in healthy, happy households, like that they came from loving parents who love each other and they exemplified love. And so it seems as though that we're in a time where what we have the opportunity in front of us is that there's been confusion and conflict and misunderstanding around the male and female soul. Yeah. And they've disconnected in some ways. And when I say the male and female soul, I'm also not talking just specifically about one male and one woman. I'm talking about the population of men and the population of women. And it doesn't matter if you're a gay person listening to this conversation or LGBT or queer. I have this theory that man's life purpose is to make women happy, and women are to be wholehearted lovers of men. Now, I have a gay uncle who heard me say that in the past and was like, what are you talking about? That's not like, no. And I'm like, well, Uncle David, I see the way that you treat grandma, your mother, and you would drop everything for her. Like her joy brings you life. I can see how you are caring for her. This isn't just a sexual thing. There's more in our, sure, I can look at, men desire to make women happy. I mean, their bodies are even make us happy. And granted, yes, a man's body can make another man happy. I've seen that. I've put on a strap and I pegged a man. Like, yes, it does make them happy in other ways too. Yeah. But what do you think from your lens, your soul's journey? What do you see in the collective around this disease, this confusion around how men and women are relating?
Yeah, it's definitely a parasite that has taken over our collective, to me, from my perspective. There's this terrible thing that has been going around for God knows how long, centuries, of men and women can't be friends. The man has to just pursue the woman for physical, things, or to basically take care of him and his household and all those things. And there can't be, a friendship like he would have with a man. And in actuality, this is what we both crave as the opposite sex. We want that. When women want to be in relationships with men, is because they want friendships with you're going to be with your best friend, who is the opposite sex. So you are looking for a male friendship. It just comes with perks of sex and everything else, all the good stuff, but it's still a friendship. And so if you can learn how to have those friendships without needing the sex, I mean, if you want, that's fine. But this is about, mentally stimulating you, about nurturing you and caring for you. Women think that we're the only ones that can nurture. No, the nurturing goes both ways, and it's in a different way. The way men nurture us is by, making us feel protected and loved and supported and held, right? That's how we get nurtured. That's how we feel good. If you're around men that all you want to do is just think about, riding off into the sunset with them, and you're not utilizing the fact that this man is here to basically support you, to lift you up. I have so many male friends that sometimes I'll stop doing something like, my podcast or whatever it is. I'll send, they'll be like, hey, what happened to this? How come you're not doing that anymore? This is really good. And there's a difference between your girlfriends holding you accountable and the men in your life holding you accountable and sort of picking you up. And it is that what we need. Just as similar, like I have brothers, right? So when I grew up, my brother was like, he picked on me, yeah, but he was also my biggest supporter. He was, he would do things for me. And I had that male perspective. I had that male energy helping me along the way. And I think a lot of women, we don't do that anymore. We've got the girl groups and the women groups and the girl trips and the this and the that, and we don't hang out with our male friends. If we do have males that some men do want to be friends with us. Some men are in happy relationships, but they think you're pretty cool and they want to hang out with you, and they're secure enough, and their significant other, whoever is secure enough, and they do want to hang out with you. But all of a sudden, this man is looking at you and you go, oh, he must want to sleep with me. And that's because society has put that into our heads that men and women cannot even be in the same space together unless it's sexual, unless there's something sexual going. And even if it is sexual, it's only sex. Everything else is off the table. And that's just not how it is, or that's not how it should be.
How did you mentioned something that you have a lot of male friends. Mm-hmm. I'm blessed. I have a lot of guy friends as well. Yeah. How did you go about making friends with men?
I'm very social. I like to say I'm an introverted extrovert. So when I'm out, like I don't go out often, but when I do go out, I'm extremely friendly. I like to, I'm very curious about people. So I'm always asking, like, what do you do? What are you into? Like, I make friends. I've always been like that, since I was young. And I think that's one of the things that we need to learn how to do is make friends, just like how you did when you were in school, right? You go into, and I've been at new schools because we used to move over. And I went to a new school, and it was like, I wasn't the new kid quiet. I was the new kid walking around, talking to everyone and sitting at whichever lunch table I wanted to. And, like that was me. And I think we need to adapt that a little bit more in our adulthood, because that's how I do it. I walk around and I have conversations. That thing we did in Calabasas, by the time it was the end of the night, I was hanging out with everybody. Like, we've been friends for years. And we just met, but that's how I feel. You have to have a level of comfortability with yourself in order to be in those spaces. So I know some people are a little bit shy and they don't like to talk to a lot of people. But even if you find someone that has something that you love, maybe you both like, you like talking about rainbows. I don't know. And so then you just keep having conversations about rainbows until it becomes something that builds. Friendships are built. It's not going to happen overnight. It's, hey, I'm doing something this weekend and you want to come and hang out, or, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. Do you want me to come and join? Things like that. We're adults. So you can invite yourself to things. Okay. It's not like high school where you don't want to be, you have to be invited. You're adult. You're an adult. If you want to go and hang out with people and they're like, oh, that sounds like fun. You guys mind if I tag along? Start there. Some guys will be like, oh, it's just me and my guys, right? That's fine if they're doing stuff like that. But if they're just having something and you get invited, or they say, oh, yeah, that would be cool. Maybe we should do something like that together. Sometimes people do send an invitation to you and you don't. I'm a projector, so I always got to wait for the invitation. But it always comes. It comes with the conversation, though, right? I don't have to necessarily sit there and just wait. I literally will just be talking, and all of a sudden I just get all these invitations. They start, swarming towards me. But it's because I'm very open. And I think that's what helps when you're building friendships. You've got to be open to it, you know?
Years ago, I remember hearing some dating coaches would suggest to their clients to cut the guy friends. Like, focus. You don't need guy friends. You're looking to be, I see your eyes are like dagger, like what? And they would say, yeah, you don't need all these guy friends. They're wasting your time, and instead focus on the one guy. Now, I do know that, like, as we said, most of us want to be in connection with, are in relationship with a best friend. Like, you are really choosing a best friend. What does that mean? A girlfriend of mine is going through a breakup, and it's like they've broken up, but underneath of it, I said to her the other day, I'm like, babe, he's not even operating like a friend. Like, we need that layer for a relationship to really thrive. Another example of that, I've been another girlfriend who was deciding whether or not that she would keep dating this man. And I said, would he be your friend if you weren't dating? And she said, no. And I was like, there you go. You got your answer.
No.
But
it's the same thing with relationships. Like, a relationship, when it's over, like, you just are not compatible anymore. If you're friends, it's an easier breakup. There's a difference in the maturity of it when you break up, because you realize, okay, it's just not working, and we can separate. This is how husbands and wives can still be friends, because they've already started that friendship. And so it's easier for them to say, okay, well, it's not working anymore in terms of us being physical, or even taking it to marriage, but we can still be friends. We can still hang out with each other. It's something that we used to do. I don't know. I grew up with, we were dating and then we stopped, but then we're all hanging out together. We're still in the same friend circle. Like, I didn't see anything wrong with that, because that to me was healthier than, I don't ever want to talk to this person ever again. And we weren't friends and we were just physical. That's not healthy.
It's not healthy. I even like for being, I encourage people to, if you're aiming to focus on building friendship with the opposite gender, because that's essentially what friendship is. It's a relationship. You're building a relationship, and it, like, look for people that you like. Like, who do you enjoy spending time with? Who do you enjoy conversations with? If you don't enjoy conversations with many people, you're going to have a hard time in relationship, as is anyway, because there's some level of judgment that's coming up that's disconnecting you with other people. So find people that you enjoy having conversations with and collect those people, and then develop relationships with them. And it can be as easy as saying to somebody that you meet out in the world, I really enjoyed this conversation with you, this connection with you. I am practicing and wanting to develop friendship with the opposite gender. I think you'd be a dope friend. Do you want to be friends? And sometimes that is so intentional that you can develop a real friendship because it's been stated from the beginning. I have a girlfriend who, she's a healer from Uganda, my girlfriend Sunyu. And I remember years ago, we met at a event in New York City where we were drawing a naked man. And she was talking about how, having moved to New York City from Boston, she was feeling that a lot of the people there were flaky. Like, you go to events and you exchange numbers, and then nothing, and then you'd reach out and they'd never get together and nothing would ever happen. And I could tell that she wanted friendship. And I took note because I heard it and I was like, okay. And because of that, I was more invested in responding to her messages and to schedule the time with her, because she put it out there of what she desired. And I was like, and I like her. She's dope. It's good conversation. And a decade later, she's one of my best friends from putting that intention right out there. So, find people that you enjoy in the dating process of having conversations with of the opposite gender, and find ways to continue to have those conversations. And also too, is a lot of times I think I know talking about specifically about dating, and we can go more into just the general idea because of a male and female friendship, is we meet somebody, say on a dating app, or, we're desiring to have a life partnership. And then you go to a coffee shop, maybe you have some phone conversations, maybe you go to dinner, maybe you go to park, but it's you and this other person hanging out one on one. Find a community to integrate with that person early on. Like, see how you guys socialize together, see how you make friends together. You never, and also too, I think being very honest in your experience, like when you meet somebody for the first time, you don't know where it's going to lead. You could go to a social gathering together with them and meet somebody else, but they were your shepherd.
Right. Like, I don't get the don't have any guy friends when you're trying to date. I don't get that, because let's talk about it from energy. Everybody's into the law of attraction, right? And being that version of you that is in a relationship. If you're not vibrating at a frequency that says, I have male energy around me, how are you going to attract that male energy that you want? We're talking about the universe, right? And how it operates in frequency and vibration. If you cut off all the male energy, the universe is just going to keep giving you women, because that's where you're vibrating. And then you wonder why you're always going to girls' things and girls' circles and women's circles and girls' trips and all these things, because you're only surrounded by that energy. This is the law of vibration. That has nothing to do with physical things. This is energy. So now, if you notice, like, I would say to your listeners, like, do it just intentionally for like a week or so, right? Pick one or two male friends, or go out for one or two male friends, and notice how that changes with, I'm telling you, men starting to talk to you and look at you different. It's the weirdest thing, but it works. It works. And you're not doing it like, oh, let me just go get a whole bunch of guy friends so I can meet my man. It's not for that, but you'll notice that when you're in that frequency, when you're just casually around your male friends, you'll notice that more men start to look at you differently. And it's because you start to speak their language. You're around women all the time. You don't know how men operate. And they do operate differently from us. They do think differently from us. My male friends crack me up sometimes. Like, they say things that I'm like, that is a guy thing. First of all, I'm a mom. I'm a boy mom. Okay. So I have 3 boys. And they're, even them, it's fascinating. And I love hanging around even them. Like, I've developed friendships with both men and women. And I think, especially as women, we need to develop more friendships with men. Now, men, I know that they've been told, not to be around women, or they tell you, oh, you can't be around a woman because you're going to be attracted to her and want to sleep with her. Well, you're going to have to learn how to control. That's maturity, right? That takes maturity. But there are sometimes that men want to be around and hang around women. And I'm talking about heterosexual men that want to come and do facials and hang out and talk about, cosmic stuff and be like that. And women will be surprised to know how much men would like to join their women's circle, their all women's circle, and be a part of it. I think we have to stop trying to exclude each other. I know there are some times when we do want to just do things with just women, just men. Like Sacred Sun is one of them that I really love, that they do stuff with just men. And I love that. I think that that's necessary too, but not all the time. Not all the time. And especially if we're moving into unity consciousness, we're moving into a collective consciousness, a consciousness where we care about one another. And that has to start with the opposite gender. That's the only way this world is going to change. We can't sit and just, rise of the divine feminine and then, the divine masculine is over there somewhere in the corner. No, it's both. We're rising both the men and the women, and we have to do that together. We can't do it separately.
When we spoke last time, you so eloquently described energy, and you started to there and you hit on the law of attraction. We were speaking about, the dating process, and when you have, I think when you hit, there's that phase in your 30s for women and men when they're like, where is she? Where is he? Like, I'm ready to create a family. Some men have focused on their career and they realize, okay, now's the time. Let's draw the women in, women too, on their career. And now they have this urge to be a mother. And I also see another state that tends to, or I guess an age demographic that tends to really feel the longing is, the over 55 plus. Generally, they've been married once before. They, that relationship ended. They thought it was their soulmate or somebody that they would be together forever. And now they're like, I want this before I die. Like, I'm on the later years of my life. I have this longing. Where is this person? I want this, godly relational experience with somebody. How does one, from your lens, reconcile this like longing and the space in between where, like, what do they do with the space in between where the other hasn't arrived yet?
It's going to go back to being friends with men. And I know some people don't want to hear that because, it's the age-old thing of if you pay so much attention to something, you only keep it away because the longing for it is telling the universe, right, that it's not, you don't have it yet. So it's just going to keep giving you that same, I don't have it yet. I don't have it yet. And, think about it like your career or even the first relationship. How did it go about? How did you get there? You didn't plan ahead on it. And even if you did write it down, there were steps that needed to be taken. Now in, your later years, you have all this experience now, but you still don't want to, be like, oh my God, I need this, it has to happen before I die, because then it won't come to you. It's energy. We are electromagnetic. And the only way you can magnetize things towards you is becoming that same frequency. What is likened to itself is drawn. And so if you're still sitting in a space of I don't have, which is a space of lack, which is a space of disconnection from that which you really want, it won't come. All you have to do is be in that energy. So this is why I'm saying to be in a relationship with a man without having any, label on it. Because then now you're in that energy. When you go off and have your relationship, your marriage, whatever it is, you're with a man. You're hanging out. You're going to dinner. All the things that you could do with your male friend and not call him your boyfriend or your fiance or whatever. It's just a male friend that you're hanging out with. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden, you get a number from someone or someone reaches out to you and says that they find you attractive or whatever, when you're not even really looking, right? And you look at it as, oh, I wasn't even really doing anything. No, you were in the energy. You were in that same frequency. We are magnets. So you don't even realize that you're operating at the same frequency of the person that you want to be with, just by simply hanging out with the same sex, hanging out with the guy.
It's so interesting because I think sometimes in this dating longing process, we're so discerning for the quote unquote, the one, and we're not looking for friends. And so you go out with them and you're like, the conversation was just okay, or his teeth were kind of crooked, or I don't know. His career, I don't think he's financially that stable. And so we disconnect.
So that becomes a friend now instead of, okay, he's not a prospect anymore. I got to just let him go and forget about it. When sometimes people don't even realize why people are brought into their lives. He could be the friend that introduces you to your husband. And yeah, you could probably meet your husband another way, but then you come and find out, oh, you were friends with so-and-so. Oh yeah, he and I went out back in the day. Yeah, and if you would have just stayed friends with him, you probably would have met your significant other, sooner. Like you don't know why people are brought into your life. Sometimes you just need that friendship. Sometimes you may not be ready for that type of relationship that you want in your head, right? That you see it all out there, but you may have things that still need to be worked on, and that friend can come along and help you with it. A lot of women also too, they have challenges with the male itself, maybe their father, the male figure in their life, whoever, and they need to work on that. Words don't teach you. You can go to all the retreats you want to. Words don't teach you. Life experience does. So sometimes you may have a man come along and he may heal some of those wounds of, maybe dad wasn't there for you, and you call your guy friend up and he jumps and comes right over. Like all of those things get healed in being in these relationships. And then you blossom and bloom, and all of a sudden your partner's there. Can also be a twist of that friendship turns into something else, but you don't want to go into it like that. You don't want to go into it like, oh, I'm going to be friends with him because it's going to develop into something. Just have friendships.
Just have friendships. And I think that's even a good, this practice of walking out the door to go meet a man for coffee that you haven't yet discerned if you want to be friends with him. Like you haven't yet had an interactions. If I was on an app and Bumble, you can go in Bumble and turn it on to make friends with other women, like Bumble for Friends. I'm not going to go out my door and meet another woman until like I have realized some type of shared interest, some type of activity that we can do together, jumped on the phone and had a vibe with her ahead of time. I'm not just going to go. It's like the same thing when dating, like don't just, the whole idea of numbers games, people always say it's just a numbers game. I'm like, oh, yes. And I could say it's a numbers game, but I'm in significant partnership now with a man. And I was pretty much, he was married for 17 years before we got together. You just separated for over a year. I was single for a decade during that time period. I dated tons and tons and tons of men, or I wouldn't even say necessarily dated them, but I had lots of interactions. Granted, I put my work was in the center of, introducing men to women. So I was hosting a lot of dating experiences and, supporting a lot of facilitators who are hosting their dating experiences. So I was around a lot and meeting a ton of people. But I really resonate with this idea. I get how people are saying it's a numbers game, but I also, each of our soul is going to have a completely different journey. And we all know the stories of your friend who's never been on a dating app, who signed on and the first person she ever connected with went on a date and now they're married. Like, so it's not a numbers game.
Right. It's energy.
And sometimes energy, universe, God would like you to go through a series of experiences or interactions that are all, we're here to grow. And each of the connections that have come to us are, as you're saying, it's all energy. It's like, why is that person sitting in front of you right now? What is the mystical magic of this moment right here?
Yep. And it just starts with a simple, hey, you want to go hang out?
So now, let's say, okay, so we're talking about men and women being friends, and we've been talking a lot about it as people who are in the dating journey. Now you've arrived in a relationship and you've met the person. And so do you stop
No way.
aiming to be friends with the opposite gender?
Yep.
And how does, the Love Club is, the members right now are hosting dating salons. We deepen dating salons at their homes, and they're inviting, they're actually finding men and finding women and who are currently single, and they're inviting them to have dynamic discussions on topics of relationship. And they choose, the host of the events will choose 5 topics that they're interested in discussing. The guests show up and they vote on what topics are most interesting. Through and through, the topic is men and women being friends, and also how men and women continue to have friendships with the opposite sex while they're in relationship. And that can bring up all types of feelings.
That, to me, that is the most healthiest way to have a relationship, because, and I'm coming from experience of being with a partner that did not want me to have male friends. But that was his level of insecurity, right? Which is just something that society sometimes puts on men and women. You can't trust your man and your woman. And some people you can't trust but that's them. That's the stuff that they've got, going on. But if you have a friendship, how great was the friendship, or how solid was the friendship, that as soon as you get into a relationship, that person becomes inconsequential. They become insignificant. You don't think about them anymore. That, to me, says a lot about you. As someone that's dating you, all of a sudden you're not friends with this woman that you used to be thick as thieves with. Now you're not friends with her because we're in a relationship. That, to me, I'm going to give you a little bit of side. Because what is it? Why that's not happening, and vice versa. If you're in a relationship with a woman and you're, secure in your masculinity, you shouldn't have a problem with her being with her male friends. You never know. You may become friends with, you should become friends with that friend. Like, that's how community grows. That's the whole purpose. That's what we're going back to, because we used to be like that. But that's what we need to get back to, that community of, we're dating, but we're also friends, and we're friends. And maybe they used to be married, but now we're all friends. Like, what is wrong with that? There's nothing, there shouldn't be. If we're fully healed, right? If we're all these, everybody's always, I'm healed. If you are fully healed, then there's nothing wrong with continuing your friendships. It's just growth. It's just more people to love, more people to connect to, more people to hang out with, go and do adventures with, buy land and, do all sorts of things with. Like, that's supposed to be what we're gearing up towards. So I think when we start to have those mindsets, right, when we start to view it that way, like, okay, I'm in a relationship with this person, I got to cut off now all my guy friends. Why? Mm-hmm. If a guy has an issue with you having guy friends, that's not the guy. He's still got some work to do. He's still got some soul searching.
I really love calling my significant other a significant other. Like, I love that term, significant other. It feels premature to call somebody who I've been in, an exclusive relationship with, like, for 5 months. We dated 9 months before that. So it's collectively, our connection has been, sometime over, closer to 2 years than a year, but he's not a life partner. We haven't done any, had a union to create that level of, connection, but there's a significance to us. And in each moment that we relate, and as time goes on, we get to know each other better, and we're deepening and deepening, and we're intertwining roots. And we do that through being intentional about it. I don't think we're intentional, not intentional, like, hey, let's go and make sure that the activities that we're doing are creating roots in the ground. But it's the, when we're together, the quality of experience and the conversation, the activities and the play that we have are deepening our connection, and trust is growing from there.
Yeah.
And as he goes out in the world and he interacts with lots and lots of people, I get more and more secure in our attachment. Now there's a Peruvian tribe. I think it's the Seekers of the Dawn, a documentary where a woman had traveled, she went on one of those like eat, pray, love journeys.
Yeah.
And she filmed an interview with a shaman in Peru. And he shared that in this particular village, when women started to be 13, that's how he said, when they start to be 13, they would teach them that when they were interacting with a man to be very gentle with themselves. And they would tell her that, they would say that he will not grow from your shoulder. He will either die or he will leave you for another woman. Yeah. And they started to teach her at that young age unattachment. Yeah. And I can see, as you are deepening in your relationships, that if you're doing it in a conscious way, where when I say conscious way, you're not just going to a bar and having drinks and playing ping pong and watching TV and seeing movies together. You're actually like participating, and maybe even you're studying eroticism together. You're reading relational books. You're learning love. You're building community together. Maybe you're biohacking. And so I think that in the unhealed relational realm, when I say unhealed relational realm, is like there's a lot of seeking, searching and sorting and seeking for my person. And then there's a lot of, I've found him and I don't want to lose him. Like I don't want another woman to take this. And I think there's some ancestral wounding that's happened to us that we come from, that in our nervous system has been passed down from generations to generation. This person took my man. So you keep your man at home, lock him up. Don't let him out.
Well, also too, we came from a lot of the culture was, there were promiscuous women. There were men that, were committing adultery that wasn't, clarified as adultery. Like they didn't look at it that way. It was just a man being a man, so we come from all those unhealed and very unhealthy ways of, if everybody's consensual and okay with, having like poly and things like that, that's fine. But if you want to have a monogamous relationship, then that's something that you sit down and talk to your partner about. But we come from generations of that sort of scarcity. Like people are very afraid to lose their man or their woman or whatever, so they keep a handle on them and they're miserable. Like those are miserable. When you look back at a lot of those relationships, they were miserable because you do miss friendships with men. Like when you're growing up, right, you have, maybe your brother's friends or just friends, guys in school you hang out with and you do all this stuff with. And all of a sudden you get like around junior high school, and it's like the boys hang out with the boys and the girls hang out with the girls. And you don't, every once in a while, everybody will hang out with each other. And then that goes on into adulthood. Then all the girls go and hang out after work and all the guys. I didn't do that. When I was working and, before I started working for myself, I was working in corporate America. And every day after work, 5:00, that bell rung, we would go hang out at the bar and I would call everybody on. It wouldn't just be the girls. It would be, come on, let's go to the bar. Brian, this person, that person, let's go to the bar. And we go and hang out. And of course, we're social and drinking, but we're all around each other, right? We're having interactions with the opposite sex. And it's something that is missing. A lot of women don't realize that just that simple thing of having a male friendship is what's missing. That's the missing formula from why you haven't met that person yet. That's the energy that's missing.
You mentioned to me before that you had a twin flame.
Yes.
And your twin flame.
Okay, so let's not because you can have more than one twin flame. Spoiler alert, I'm very sorry. As someone that has been doing this esoteric work for 30 years, that has done extensive work in spiritual development, I can tell you that from my experience, you can have more than one twin flame, because the twin, when we're talking about the twin, we're talking about souls. It's actually twin soul. We say twin flame, which is more about the threefold flame, right? But it's the twin soul. So there's different types of soul incarnations that fall under the category of twin. So you can have a monadic twin, which is more of a higher dimensional oversoul incarnation. And the monadic twin is both masculine and feminine. Most monadic twins are, very poly, if they do have relationships, or they don't have relationships for a long time, but they do have connections with the opposite sex. Like, it's it's not this longing. So now you have like the twin flame split, which is the masculine and feminine energy. And those are usually the two that are always longing and searching for each other, and, always with the karmics and all of that stuff. And then you have the lower fractal, which is a lot of the collective right now that sort of gets influenced by these higher souls, soul fragments, soul pieces. But it's always about the soul. It's not about just the human experience. And that's what it confuses people, because they meet someone and that's their twin, and then that's it, period. There's no and. Like, the twin is not there to just make you stop, full stop. The twin is there for the expansion. So when you do meet a twin, get ready, because, whirlwind is coming, life, expansion, growth, upgrades, all the things. But before that, you got to get rid of all that stuff. So let's go with the dark night of the soul. All those things are going to come up. Even if you think you've healed, right? You heal a bunch. Like, when I met my current twin, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this shamanism for a long time, all this stuff behind my belt. And I met him, and it was like, all of that went out the window. And I was like, oh, what is this? What's happening? What are these feelings? And it wasn't a feeling of, I need to be with this person. It was a feeling of a deep connection, of a remembrance of past incarnations, the dream time experiences of having past lives together. All those things start to come in and get pretty trippy. But what it boils down to is just allowing you to expand, to realize that you're much more than just this life. So they, again, remember in the beginning how I said, I got all this stuff to be a memory for others, right? To help remind others. The twins are just another memory. They're another memory imprint to help you remember source, to help you remember God, the oneness. That's all it is.
How did you meet this person, and how did you come to the conclusion that this was a twin flame?
Okay, I never talked about this out in the open before. I talk about this among friends. But so I met him in the astral. It was really trippy. I met him in the astral. So I met him in the dream before I met him in the physical. And once I met him in the physical, I didn't see his face. I only heard his voice. He was on a podcast. He was doing a podcast. And I just, my guides told me to go listen to the podcast. And I'm listening to the podcast. And then I started getting curious. I'm like, who's this guy? So I look him up. And the minute I look him up, I'm like, is this the dude that was just in my dream? Like, what is this? What's going on? And so, of course, for me, it's different because I do have a connection to my guides. And I do have that spiritual background. So asking those questions and receiving the answers and trusting the answers is, important. And that's basically like fitting in the puzzle pieces of, oh, okay, so yes, it is him. And then it was, okay, so what's the significance of this connection? Because from the first twin, I knew that this twin stuff is not just about the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and riding off into the sunset. So I'm like, okay, there's an experience happening here. What is it? And so I was able to home in on it. But I would say to someone that is just newly having this twin experience, and you may meet someone and have that really kinetic energy with them, you got to look at what do they have to teach you, because that's what the twin is all about. Your twin is very different from your soulmate. We were talking about that before, right? Your soulmate is the person that's just like you guys finish each other's sentences. You resonate with the same things, like you're into all of the same things. Like that's your soulmate, the mate to your soul. Your twin is the exact opposite. You like night, they like day. You like in, they like out. And it's for that. It's for the reason it happens that way is so that you can have a balance, because the duality and the polarity are illusions. And so this is how we break the Maya, right? This is how we break the illusion, is we connect with the twin, and the twin allows us to see ourselves in that other perspective, in that other way of being. And then we can join it. We can bring it together. That takes work. It's not like 1, 2, 3. Oh, this is my opposite.
So he comes to you in the dream state, another dimension. The podcast or your guides bring you to the podcast, and then do you reach out to him and
initially, let me see, how long did it take me to reach out to him? I would say it took me maybe like a week or two to reach out to him, because when they told me that he was my twin, it wasn't until right before we had our first, because he does similar work. So we had a session together, and they told me like right before. And so before that, I was very curious about what he did, and it seemed very similar to what I did, but it was opposite, it was complete opposite. But in the realms of spirituality and spiritual development and talking about spirituality, those things were the same. And so it took me, some time to figure it out. And then once I did, when we had our first interaction, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm your twin, by the way. It was a conversation that was supposed to be 45 minutes and ended up being an hour and a half, just because, it's an old familiar soul that you sort of communicate with. It's outside of time. So you just, we're floating, we're having different interactions and it wasn't a fully sexual experience. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel, of course there was obviously an attraction to him, but it wasn't like, my God, this is him. This is my one guy, It was more a spiritual connection. And I would say that I attribute it to the fact that I'm so spiritually developed. So it's going to be different for everyone. It's not going to be the same story. But what I did do was develop a friendship. And we're friends. and it's fine, and it's good, and it's helped mature both of us, and we are friends in the sense that we'll call each other out, and we'll do things like that, but that's a friendship. Your friends are supposed to hold you accountable. Your friends are supposed to tell you, hey, I don't know, what are you doing? This is kind of not your thing. What's up? Is it something new? Your friends are supposed to be able to do that for you. So any connection that you have, especially a twin connection, those are the ones that you want to start out as friendships.
What would you say to somebody who's listening to this and being like, well, I want my twin flames too. Yeah. Like, is that something to search for? Is that?
No, never. Not in my experience. The seeking that you're doing is more so just being present. And like I said, like that day, I wasn't, I had this really trippy Dreamtime experience that I will not share. But it was a really, really trippy, I'll share it off when we get off here. I'll tell you.
Oh my God, I'm like, yeah, you got to share it now.
Well, it was just a really trippy experience in the sense of like, I went to where he lived. I didn't know anything about him. And they took me to exactly where he was originally from, and then where he lived now. All of those things were very detailed in the dream. Oh, wow. So that when I met him in person, I could not deny it, right? Because all of those things were very detailed in the dream. And so it was that type of experience. And so I would say to look for those serendipity experiences. That's what's gonna connect you. And you don't need to look for, if you're a twin, then your twin is just it's magnets. So once you start vibrating at the same frequency, there's nothing can stop the connection from coming together.
I asked that question about searching for twin because I could see myself a decade ago listening to this and feeling, oh, I want that too. Right. And what has more, what I said at the beginning of this podcast is that each of our souls have different gifts, different journeys. We're here to evolve in our own unique way towards, I would say towards love. Like I would say more greater towards love, greater towards
the Heros Gamos. It's the divine marriage. And it's that can be with anyone. The divine marriage is like Rumi would say that we are each other's beloved, right? Like I'm supposed to love you the same way I love my children, the same way I love my mother, the same way, not that love of motherly love, but just a love as of another source spark, another spark of the divine, another reminder of God, right? I'm supposed to have that connection with you. And that's what everyone teaches us how to do, whether it be through their, cruelties or whatever it is, they're still teaching us how to bring that closer to connection to the divine. Yeah. So that's what it is about. But twin flame is not for the faint of heart. So if you think about all your relationships that have been challenging, is sometimes what a twin flame can be. Not for everyone, but most people that are in twin flame connections, if you do meet a twin, again, it's not this storybook romance. It's not the Hallmark. We meet in the park and fall in love 2 weeks later. That's not what's going to happen because it's designed to help you expand.
It's possible that I actually have had a lot of twin encounters and just haven't labeled them in that way. My soul really resonates this lifetime from being from the future. And when people share about past life experiences, I'm in all of them. And I'm like, I don't have that. But I've kind of come as you come to know yourself. My significant other, he'll joke. He'll be like, yeah, you have past lives. You're just been giving this, you don't need to know them this lifetime. And I'm like, sure.
That's a big responsibility. I tell people that all the time. Like knowing your past lives, having, like I have recall, we call it recall, or we call it fetal memory. So where you can remember your life in Lemuria and Atlantis and all those things. So I have that. It's not glitzy and glamoury like people think it is, because you hold all those memories of people that you left, people that, your loved ones, maybe somebody that you were with, whatever it is, even your death, so those things are important. Sometimes the soul comes in, it doesn't want all of that. Mm-hmm. You just came here to be in this life, right? Because having all of that, that's a lot of responsibility that, nobody wants that all the time. Be sitting reminiscing about what you did in the 1800s.
Yeah, more so I intuitives and shamans, which has resonated with me, have shared with, like, you're from the future. You've come from the future and you're having a human experience for the first time. Now, I also feel as though I've had future, if you say time is past, present, future, all happening at the same time. So maybe this is the past life of the future lives. But this existence right now feels, fresh. And there's a lot of what's happening currently that my soul, I had to go through levels of understanding. Like I've said this on the podcast. I've said this on a stage at a political event, which is funny that I facilitated a love and politics panel discussion at the Independent National Convention. And I told the audience that I've never voted. And Yes. And I have, RFK is really interesting to me, but I really will most likely not vote. And a lot of people will hold judgment against that. For me, I don't have health insurance. Not to say that it's bad to have health insurance, but it's just not my way. And I feel secure and confident in my existence and the way that I operate. And I feel taken care of despite not necessarily fully fitting in the ways that some societal makeups have created it to be. And I actually had to go and I didn't understand until, probably it was my secret for years that I didn't vote. I was held it in secrecy. You don't tell people that. And then I was on a date actually. And the guy on the date, I mentioned it to him and he was very upset about me not doing it. And I couldn't articulate why I didn't. So I had to actually go and study myself and look for other people to try to understand why I don't resonate.
Because I don't vote either. I know. Listen, as a shaman, I know way too much to vote. So I don't even want to that'll be another discussion for another.
That'll be another, because I imagine you get it as you're a Black woman. How have you not voted?
I know way too much to vote. So
I hear you.
Every time someone asks me, that's my answer. I know too much to vote. Take it or leave it. It is what it is. So.
Yeah, my answer is do you if I really felt love from these people, that they really cared for my humanity and your humanity and our benefit.
Yeah. Because people will say, it's the lesser of two evils. No, I choose not to choose evil at all. So there's that. You're not getting my vote. It'll be one less.
Maybe if they start with friendship, if we could be friends first.
Right. Let me see what you're really like. I mean, if you do it that way, we vote based on friendships, there would be no candidates. But anyway.
Thank you so much for this lovely discussion. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you. I look forward to now having you in my community, in my orbiting around of what will come from our connection.
Yes.
What are you up to? If someone listened to this podcast, what are you doing out in the world?
So currently I'm doing 2 mentorships. One is an apprenticeship. That one's a little bit longer and a little bit more advanced for those who are already practitioners and wanting to come and expand in shamanism. And we go from Celtic shamanism to Druidry and all the things. That's a 6-month process, but I do an 8-week course. It's called the Ascension Protocol. And I basically help people to connect with their energy body and to do simple healing techniques and also a little bit more extensive, but simple healing techniques that can literally change their life. I've worked with cancer patients and people with long COVID and a lot of other things that have used these ancient modalities that we used to use in order to heal themselves, and not just heal themselves, but also empower themselves and show up in the world as their most authentic self and their full potential.
What a
so
good
if anyone
year.
wants to come and join me. What
a good year to do that work too. Yeah. I mean, heading into, as we hit on voting, heading into an election year, to rise above it and to we've got to take back our sovereignty. It's not going to be handed to us, and that is an inner journey. That's the inner work that I love doing. I love self-empowering people. I mean, yes, I'm a shaman, I'm a healer, and all of those things, but we're all healers, and it's just waiting to be awakened in us. And so I'm an activator. That's what. Well, I'm going to include in the description of this podcast, you can find out where to connect with Destiny.
Sweetspiritoflight.com. You can go to sweetspiritoflight.com. She'll put all the information in there. And if you come and sign up to my mailing list, you get a free guided meditation. It's one of my most powerful guided meditation. It's a simple meditation that you can use every day. I've had people with depression use it, and then the next day they're up and just, in their life and fully present. So it's a powerful meditation. If you sign up for the mailing list, you can get it right away.
I'm definitely going to sign up. I want to try your meditation too. Thank you so much for joining for this podcast. You're welcome. One last question before I jump off. If you wanted to channel, transmute something through to the listeners right now, what's one thing that you're like, if I don't say this right now, I might, regret that I didn't share this on this podcast?
Well, if we're talking about the connections that we have with men, I would say to forget everything that you've been taught as far as us separating ourselves from the opposite sex. If you want to be in a connection with a man, don't put it up as just, it has to be this way. Be flexible. Be okay with being vulnerable with men and trusting in those relationships again, and see how your life changes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Deepen with Christina. Again, if you do enjoy this podcast, please do like, subscribe, rate, give it 5 stars. Helps more people find it, helps more people to come into the network and journey through experiences with you. I love you. Until next time. Bye for now.